generous in prosperity and thankful in adversity. Be worthy of the trust of thy neighbor, and look upon him with a bright and friendly face. Be a treasure to the poor, an admonisher to the rich, an answerer of the cry of the needy, a preserver of the sanctity of thy pledge. Be fair in thy judgment and guarded in thy speech. Be unjust to no man, and show all meekness to all men. Be as a lamp unto them that walk in darkness, a joy to the sorrowful, a sea for the thirsty, a haven for the distressed, an upholder and defender of the victim of oppression. Let integrity and uprightness distinguish all thine acts. Be a home for the stranger, a balm to the suffering, a tower of strength for the fugitive. Be eyes to the blind, and a guiding light unto the feet of the erring. Be an ornament to the countenance of truth, a crown to the brow of fidelity, a pillar of the temple of righteousness, a breath of life to the body of mankind, an ensign of the hosts of justice, a luminary above the horizon of virtue, a dew to the soil of the human heart, an ark on the ocean of knowledge, a sun in the heaven of bounty, a gem on the diadem of wisdom, a shining light in the firmament of thy generation, a fruit upon the tree of humility. Bahá'u'lláh.
Thank you. So today, our speaker is Mr. Marco Oliveira, and his topic is An Introduction to the Writings of Bahá'u'lláh, the Tablet of Maqsúd. Mr. Marco Oliveira is a Portuguese Bahá'í living in Lisbon, Portugal. He was born into a Catholic family and accepted the Bahá'í Faith in 1984. He's married, has 2 children, and works as a software engineer. He attended the Religious Sciences course at the Catholic University of Lisbon and is the author of the blog Povo de Bahá, People of Bahá. The deepening of Baha'i themes, the study of scripture, and theology have been his passions. In recent years, he has devoted special attention to the study of Christian themes from a Baha'i perspective. He's the author of the book Divine Therapy, the first introductory book on the Baha'i Faith published by an independent publisher and sold in Portuguese bookstores. And with that, I'll hand it off to Mr. Oliveira.
Thank you very much. Okay, so friends, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for your presence here. The purpose of this session is to present the main principles of Baha'i faith as described by Baha'u'lláh and in his Tablet of Maqsúd. It is also an opportunity to demonstrate how this tablet can be used as a starting point, as an entrance to the reading and study of Baha'i writings. You probably know this sentence: the earth is but one country and mankind is citizens. I think everyone that comes in touch with the Baha'i faith, every Baha'i, every seeker, every person who has ever read anything or heard anything about Baha'i faith knows this sentence: the earth is but one country and mankind is its citizens. It's one of the most quoted phrases from the Baha'i writings, is constantly used in public statements to present the Baha'i faith. And I think everyone who comes in contact with the Baha'i faith is familiar with this sentence because it sums up the core teaching of the Baha'i faith. Now, what about these quotes? Your fruits of one tree, leaves of one branch. Should any king take up arms against another, all should unitedly arise and prevent him. Whatsoever passed behind the limits of moderation will cease to exert a beneficial influence. Such academic pursuits as begin and end in words alone have never been and will never be of any worth. These are statements that also describe some of the teachings and principles of the Baha'i faith. They're also much used when we present the faith. Now, what's interesting about these quotes and the previous one is that they have a common source, and that is the Tablet of Maqsúd. And the Tablet of Maqsúd, because of its content, can be understood and seen as an appropriate starting point to the study and reading of the Baha'i writings. Has a structure that is suitable to anyone who wants to have a first contact with the Baha'i writings. I know that most of us, when come in contact with the Baha'i faith, typically we start with books like The Hidden Words or Some Answered Questions. But then when you want to move to the writings of Baha'u'lláh, to other writings of Baha'u'lláh, where should we start? Well, sorry, my suggestion is the Tablet of Maqsúd. But before we start a brief analysis of this tablet, there are some things that we should have in mind. A sacred text has its very own specific characteristics. We must acquaint ourselves with the style. We must acquaint ourselves with the terminology. We have to have in mind the purpose of the author of the text, if we want to really understand the intended meaning of the text. If we are not aware of these features, then we have a serious risk of not understanding the text. The writings of Baha'u'lláh may present several difficulties for any reader. For example, we have to know the context of every of the writings we are studying. We have to know the circumstances in which the text was revealed, when and where it was revealed, why was it revealed? Is this text an answer to questions from some believer? If yes, then what were the questions? And what were the motivations that led Baha'u'lláh to answer him? For instance, a text that was revealed in Baghdad is necessarily different from a text that was revealed in Adrianople or Akka, because these are different periods in the life of Baha'u'lláh. A text that is addressed to a believer is necessarily different from a text that is addressed to a king or a ruler. So this is something that we have to have in mind, understand the context surrounding the revelation of the text. Another challenge could be the themes. Typically, the texts revealed by Baha'u'lláh have several themes, several main themes, and then there are secondary themes, and these overlap each other. And there are even other minor themes that appear in just a paragraph or a phrase or a metaphor, and we have to pay attention to all these themes, how they connect with each other to understand the text as a whole. And then we have this, have the style, the overlapping of themes, the connection between the themes. This is very frequent in Baha'i writings. And in the middle of all this overlapping and interconnection between the themes, we can find invocations and prayers. That occurs here in the Tablet of Maqsúd. So let's look at the background of this tablet. This Tablet of Maqsúd was revealed in January 1882 during the fourth exile of Baha'u'lláh in Akka, city of Akka in Ottoman Palestine. Parts of this tablet were translated and published during the 20th century, and a full translation in English was released in 1978 in a book called Tablets of Baha'u'lláh Revealed After the Kitab Yaqtas. Now, this book contains a series of tablets revealed by Baha'u'lláh during the last years of his life. It's a book that clarifies and reaffirms some of the teachings that he previously established. This tablet was addressed to a believer named Mirza Maqsúd, that we know was living in Damascus in Syria, but we don't know much about him. In fact, historians seem to agree that the tablet itself is the main source of information about this believer. So we know that Maqsúd lived in Damascus. We know that he had written at least twice to Baha'u'lláh. We know that he dedicated himself to poetry, that some of his poems were recited in the presence of Baha'u'lláh. And in these poems, one could perceive how much he wanted to visit Baha'u'lláh personally. Baha'u'lláh probably liked Maqsúd a lot. He says that he will remember him. He says that God will also remember Maqsúd. And Baha'u'lláh adds that the name of Maqsúd is often mentioned in his presence. When the tablet was revealed, Maqsúd was planning to travel to Mosul in Iraq to teach the Bahá'í Faith there. And in the tablet, Baha'u'lláh makes some recommendations for him, for his journey, advising him to use tact and wisdom in his journey to Mosul. He also presents several spiritual and material advice to Maqsúd. He tells him that if he's happy with everything that happens to him in his life, then that would be an attitude worthy of praise. He also advised Maqsúd to get a profession, to have a job, an occupation. And towards the end of the epistle, Baha'u'lláh reveals a prayer for Maqsúd. And what was the world then when this epistle was revealed? Specifically, how was the Ottoman world in which lived the newly born Baha'i community? It was a world in turbulence. The Ottoman Empire was in a moment of considerable weakness. And there are two events that are what I would say the highlights of this crisis of weakness in the Ottoman Empire. There was the Russian-Ottoman War in 77-78, and there was the crisis in Egypt that ended with a bombardment of Alexandria. The Russian-Ottoman War, 77-78, ended with a tremendous humiliation for the Ottomans. It was a war that started with the massacres in several Ottoman provinces, and then followed by the Russian support to nationalist movements in several territories in the Balkans, and ended with huge territorial losses for the Ottomans. We have a map there. We'll see in more detail. You see there, for instance, these areas in green, they were taken by Russia. So you had this, what is today southern Ukraine, was being gradually taken by Russia. What is Abkhazia, part of Georgia, and Kars, also taken by Russia. Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia became independent. Bosnia was taken by the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the British took Cyprus. They annexed Cyprus, they took possession of Cyprus. So you see, for the Ottomans, they were being attacked from the north, from the west, from the south. They were suspicious of their neighbors in the east. They were feeling very, very weak. You have there also a picture of the capitulation of the Turks in a city of Nikopol during this war. And then there was also the crisis in Egypt. Egypt was had some autonomy within the Ottoman Empire. It was ruled by the Khedive. They had financial autonomy. So the Khedive could conceive his own budget for the country. And at a certain point, the British and the French start lending money to Egypt. And the Khedive received that money, but didn't apply it in a very wise way. And it came to a point when the British and the French said, now it's time to pay. You have to pay this with interest. And Khedive said, okay, but we don't have money to pay that debt. Okay, so we'll tell you who should be your finance minister. And the British and the French suggested a finance minister. But still, the Egyptians were not paying the debt. And then the British and the French imposed a finance minister. And 90% of the tax revenue was taken by these two European countries. And of course, that caused tremendous poverty and revolt amongst the Egyptians. And an Egyptian military, Colonel Urabi, led a revolt against Europeans. The revolt spread throughout the country, and at a point there were riots in Alexandria, riots where about 50 Europeans were killed. And when that happened, the British and French fleet rushed to the city. They evacuated all the Europeans from Alexandria. And after that, the British fleet destroyed the city. The British fleet destroyed Alexandria. And that was a shock. That was a shock in the Muslim world. That was a shock in many other countries. There was a Portuguese novelist who was living in Britain at the time. He used to write to articles and to Portuguese and Brazilian newspapers. He was an admirer of the British, but he was very critical of some of their imperial attitudes. And he was highly critical of this bombardment of Alexandria. He writes this: today, at the time I'm writing, Alexandria is just a huge pile of ruins. Of the European quarter, the famous Council Square, the hotels, the banks, office of corporations, the coffee brothels, there is only left confused rubble on the ground, and here and there, a darkened wall that collapses. For the fourth time in history, Alexandria ceased to exist. For Essa de Queiroz, Alexandria was not only an Egyptian city. Alexandria was part of world history. It was a city that belonged to humanity, and only barbarians would destroy a city like that. So he was shocked with the attitude of the British. So if Essa de Queiroz was shocked, how much more shocked should have been the Muslims and the Ottomans? So this is the historical context surrounding the revelation of the tablet. Now, looking at the tablet itself, we can identify some central themes. And in my reading of this tablet, I have these three main themes: revelation and religion, civilization, and the human being. And there are, of course, some other secondary themes to which Baha'u'lláh devotes only one paragraph or one phrase. But I will focus on these three main themes: revelation and religion, civilization, and the human being. So let's go to the first topic, revelation and religion. When we talk about religion, everyone has questions, everyone. Even if you're an atheist, you have questions about religion, because there are no definite answers to the topic of religion. We can have questions like, what is religion itself? What is the definition of religion? Why are there so many religions? Why do religions have sometimes a positive influence and sometimes a negative influence in the history of mankind? Are religions compatible? Is it possible that only one religion is true and all others are false? could there be any religion that is the final word of God to humanity? No. And of course, each one of us can add many more questions to this list of questions on this topic. What Baha'u'lláh says about religion is that he affirms the veracity of major world religions and describes major world religions as steps in a gradual process of divine revelation. And at the same time, he rejects that any religion may have the exclusive of truth, or any religion may be the final word of God to humanity, as some clergy in many religions claim. Baha'u'lláh says that God is sending divine messengers cyclically to humanity with teachings that are suitable to the maturity of different peoples in different moments of their existence. These messengers, that are the founders of the world great religions, the great world religions, these messengers, they bring teachings with the purpose of guiding and enlightening humanity. And this is this process of divine revelation is what we in the Bahá'í Faith call divine revelation. This topic of progressive revelation is addressed on the second paragraph of the Tablet of Maqsúd. Baha'u'lláh says, moreover, he hath in every age and cycle, in conformity with his transcendent wisdom, sent forth a divine messenger to revive the dispirit and despondent souls with the living waters of his utterance, one who is indeed the expounder, the true interpreter, inasmuch as man is unable to comprehend that which has streamed forth from the pen of glory and is recorded in his heavenly books. Man, at all times and under all conditions, stand in need of one who exhorted them, guided them, to instruct and teach them. Therefore, he had sent forth his messengers, his prophets and chosen ones, that they might acquaint the people with the divine purpose underlying the revelation of books and raising up of messengers, and that everyone may become aware of the trust of God which is latent in the reality of every soul. So the history of religion for humanity could be described in a picture like this. We have God sending distant messengers with teachings, as I said, suitable for different peoples with different levels of maturity in different moments of their existence. And these teachings, they are guiding and stimulating the development of that people. This is a never-ending process. Baha'u'lláh himself, we believe to be the most recent messenger, but not the last one, because we, humanity, we continue to evolve, and our needs in 1,000 years will be very different for sure of the needs and worries that we have today. Still on this topic, on the Tablet of Maqsúd, we see that religion can be seen as an agent with potential to regenerate the world. Baha'u'lláh says that the purpose of religion is to safeguard the interest and to promote the unity of the human race and to foster the spirit of love and fellowship amongst men. Suffer it not to become a source of dissension and discord, of hate and enmity. And here in this tablet, Baha'u'lláh also adds a brief reference to religious leaders who, he says, must consult with the government on what best serves the interest of humanity. Because religious leaders, they have a role to play in the rehabilitation of human condition. throughout the evolution of humanity, throughout our history, we have seen fantastic things and terrible things. And we cannot ignore the capacity, the ability of religion to guide us in these development stages, and also to help us mitigate the sufferings that will inevitably face in our common development. Baha'u'lláh tells us that the scriptures of every religion, they show the path to follow in the evolution of humanity, and they present the means to solve our problems. Baha'u'lláh refers to the teachings in the scriptures as the fruits of the tree of wisdom. And he says that the people of the world seems to be unable to appreciate the taste of these fruits because because of the fever of negligence and folly. According to Baha'u'lláh, the source of most of our problems seems to be our inability as humans to put in practice the true teachings of religion. When a person puts religious teachings in practice, he or she transforms himself or herself and affects in a positive way everyone around him or her. So the transformation of the world, the betterment of the world, is not achieved with mere political and social transformation. It is required also an individual transformation, and that occurs when we follow the divine teachings. That's what he says to us in the tablet of Maqsúd. Let's move now to the second topic, civilization. Baha'u'lláh tells us that humanity has been afflicted by several turmoils, and however, no one seems to have stopped to think for a moment what are the reasons for these turmoils. He writes in the tablet of Maqsúd, the winds of despair are, alas, blowing from every direction, and strife that divide and afflict the human race is daily increasing. Human beings are divided against each other and seems to have always been willing to be in conflict with each other. In fact, if you look at the history of the world in the 19th century, we had conflict after conflict. It's a century that started with Napoleonic Wars, then you have revolutions after 15 years, 1830. Then you had revolutions in the 1848, the so-called the springtime of the peoples, the early democratic revolutions. Then we had this Franco-Prussian War. There were wars between great European powers in the Crimea and all over. It's like a never-stopping conflict. So you have these winds of despair blowing from every direction. And these conflicts, these revolutions. About this, Baha'u'lláh says, how long will injustice continue? How long is chaos and confusion to reign amongst men? How long will discord agitate the face of society? It's a fact that the world has changed a lot since this tablet was revealed, and it has changed for bad and for worse. And the questions that Baha'u'lláh asks here still make sense and should make us all think, how long will we allow this to continue? In fact, the problems he's questioning are not only the problems that the Ottoman Empire was facing at the time. These are problems that the whole world is facing since 2 or 3 centuries ago. It's like a never-ending conflict. But the interesting thing is that Baha'u'lláh is not presenting a fatalistic view. He says that the human being a rational creature, has all the capabilities, all the capacity to solve his problems, to solve these problems, to answer, to find a proper solution to all these conflicts. But it's strange that nobody seems to want to use that skills, those rational skills, to solve these problems. So he's saying, well, you have the skills, you have the tools to solve your problems. Why do you persist not using those tools? You know, rationality is a God-given tool. Use it. You know? And to respond to these current problems, Baha'u'lláh advocates the need of a new world order. Now, a new world order is a term that is often used to describe significant changes and the rebalancing of power in the world of politics. It was used after the end of World War I and World War II. It was used at the end of Cold War. And I remember at the end of Cold War, the American and the Soviet presidents felt there was a need of a new order, a new world order of cooperation, not confrontation between superpowers. And Time magazine had this wonderful cover with the president of the United States and Soviet Union, and they started building a new world order. But the expression is also used, this expression new world order, is also used when we describe the need of global solutions for global problems. The environmental crisis, it needs a global solution. It's something that cannot be faced or solved with national solutions. The economic crisis, it needs a global solution. There are other questions like how do we administer global institutions like the World Bank, like the International Monetary Fund, like the G20? Okay, should we create a global military force to intervene in failed states? Now, all these global problems require a new world order, because a world of nations is a world that we have seen in the past 2 or 3 centuries, where it prevails the will of the most powerful. And that's not, we know where that led us. Is suffering after suffering, turmoil after turmoil. Okay, so we need a new balance, a new world order. We should have in mind that this expression, new world order, sometimes is used with a negative meaning. Sometimes it's presented as a synonym of imperialism or global dictatorship. If you have read 1984 of George Orwell, you will understand that. Some conservative groups abhor this expression. Conservative groups, they defend the world of nations as the best we have achieved. Well, we think we can go further. Okay? And in the tablet of Maqsúd, after describing the problems of the world and questioning why do we persist on these mistakes, Baha'u'lláh presents a formula to achieve peace and tranquility in the world. He writes this: the time must come when the imperative necessity for the holding of a vast and all-embracing assemblage of men will be universally realized. The rulers and kings of the earth must needs attend it, and participating in its deliberations must consider such ways and means as will lay the foundations of the world's great peace amongst men. Such peace demands that the great powers should resolve, for the sake of the tranquility of the peoples of the earth, to be fully reconciled among themselves. Should any king take up arms against another, all should unitedly arise and prevent him. If this be done, the nations of the world will no longer require armaments, except for the purpose of preserving the security of their realms and of maintaining internal order within their territories. This will ensure the peace and composure of every people, government, and nation. This paragraph is also one of the most quoted paragraphs of the Baha'i writings. And it contains a formula that seems obvious to every one of us, or every person with a little common sense. And we have witnessed in the past century, in the past decades, attempts to implement plans like this. We had the League of Nations after World War II, and we had the United Nations that still prevails and that were created after World War II. Now, these two organizations were created in the aftermath of world wars, and they reflect a balance of power that exists after those wars. And with the passing of time, they became inadequate to meet new demands, new global demands. So we still have the United Nations today. That's good, but we have a lot of people who demand a reform in the United Nations. They want United Nations to be more balanced, more interventionist, more representative of the current global conditions. And the interesting thing here is that Baha'u'lláh laid the principles. And we have a challenge now is, okay, so we need a vast assemblage with all governments of the earth represented there. What should be the desired balance for all nations? We need a balance that can persist. We need a global organization that is strong enough to be respected by all nations of the world, but at the same time to be flexible enough to adapt itself to the changes that inevitably will occur in the world. So that's our challenge currently with an organization like the United Nations. In the Tablet of Maqsúd, Baha'u'lláh describes kings and rulers as symbols of powers of God, and he presents several ethical advices that should guide the governance. He says that any statesman, the governance of any statesman should be guided by the welfare, the security, and the protection of mankind, and the safety of human lives. Interesting here, he's saying protection for any statesman, protection of mankind and safety of human lives. He's not talking about protection of your citizens or protection of this group of your nationals. No, it's a protection of mankind. So statesmen have to have a global vision. And in this tablet, Baha'u'lláh also condemns tyranny. He regrets, he says, that the tabernacle of justice has fallen into the clutches of tyranny and oppression. He was witnessing that within the Ottoman Empire. As I said, Baha'u'lláh in this tablet says that rulers should have a comprehensive worldview. Service to the state should not have a goal to serve only a specific group of people over others, to benefit only one segment of society or one social class. You have to serve all mankind. And it is interesting, if we contrast this with the political theories that appear in the 19th and the 20th century that would serve one national group over one nation over another. have nationalisms, one social class over another. We have it. One group over another, one part of society over another. We have it. That all causes suffering and injustice. And in the tablet of Maqsúd, he says, that one indeed is a man who today dedicates himself to the service of the entire human race. And concerning those nationalisms, the rising nationalism that at this time we find in the Balkans, in the newly independent countries that Russia helped to become independent from the Ottoman Empire, he says, it is not for him to pride himself who loved his own country, but rather for him who loved the whole world. The earth is but one country and mankind is citizens. Nationalism was on the rising at this time and would grow even more with terrible consequences, as we saw with World War I and World War II. So these words of Baha'u'lláh are against nationalism, are truly revolutionary. Another teaching mentioned here in the Tablet of Maqsúd is the need of adoption of an international auxiliary language. It says, the day is approaching when all the peoples of the world will have adopted one universal language and one common script. When this is achieved, to whatsoever city a man may journey, it shall be as if he were entering his own home. This is another measure to increase the understanding and harmony amongst the people of the world. And how should we do this? It says that the nations of the world should appoint men of wisdom who, in consultation, would choose one language from among the variety existing language, or create a new one to be taught to the children of all schools of the world. Now, the third topic of this epistle, a human being. Here in Europe, we had humanist trends of thought since the Renaissance, since the Enlightenment. These were, I'd say, ideologies that proclaim the dignity and the value of every human being and stress the importance of rationality. And one of the exponents of this humanist thought was Erasmus of Rotterdam. He was a Dutch Catholic theologian. He believed that without education, civilization would be replaced by barbarity. Civilization would collapse. Education would help human beings to develop and raise above other creatures. Because humans should act according to reason, while animals act according to instinct. Therefore, we should develop reason through education. Erasmus had several followers who devote themselves to teaching and to the establishment of schools throughout Europe. He has this famous sentence, men are not born men, they become men. So we had this humanist thought prevailing in Europe, creating roots in Europe. And then we find in the Tablet of Maqsúd what we could consider a confirmation of the validity of this humanist perspective, and many references to the importance of education and to the development of human potential. In the Tablet of Maqsúd, Baha'u'lláh describes human beings as a supreme talisman and a mind rich in gems of inestimable value. And because we as humans are the highest expression of creation, then we should also express what he describes as good character, pure deeds, and a seemly and praiseworthy conduct. So if we have a high status in the eyes of God, we should also have high efforts, have to develop high efforts to rehabilitate the world and work for the welfare of the nations. It's quite a responsibility to have such a status in the eyes of God. Baha'u'lláh says that it's the lack of education that has prevented people from revealing their full potential. And he states that children should study science and arts, that he says in the Tablet of Maqsúd, that will result in advantage to man, will ensure his progress and elevate his rank. But he adds, such academic pursuits as begin and end in words alone have never been and will never be of any worth. And he noticed that men educated people in Persia this time have produced nothing but words. The Tablet of Maqsúd also has a reference to the wise and the learned ones in every society. Baha'u'lláh in this tablet says, the man of consummate learning and the sage endowed with penetrate wisdom are the two eyes to the body of mankind. God willing, the earth shall never be deprived of these two greatest gifts. That is, the wise people, the sage that we find in every country, in every society, they have a role to play in educating the people, in the dissemination of knowledge. They are key actors in the social regeneration of mankind, the wise and the learned ones. And then ethical advices. Baha'u'lláh warns us in this tablet about the power of human words. We know that our words have a power that affect emotions and actions. Our words can exert an influence in other people. And Baha'u'lláh puts it in a poetical way, I can say, in this tablet of Maqsúd. He says, one word may be likened unto fire, another unto light, and the influence which both exert is manifest in the world. One word is like unto springtime, causing the tender saplings of the rose garden of knowledge to become verdant and flourishing, while another word is even as a deadly poison. So use words with wisdom. Think of the influence we can cause on others. And another ethical teaching, moderation. If you look at history, you have a lot of philosophers and scholars emphasizing the need of moderation in human activities. We can go back as to the classic times of the Roman Empire, when Cicero wrote, never enter into excess. Let moderation guide you. And we have in the Tablet of Maqsúd, Baha'u'lláh stating, whatsoever passed behind the limits of moderation will cease to exert a beneficial influence. How interesting that this teaching of Baha'u'lláh, this advice of Baha'u'lláh, can be seen as turning the advice of Cicero into divine guidance. Okay? As if he was saying, yeah, Cicero was right. And when Baha'u'lláh says that, this is no longer a philosophical advice. This is divine teaching. Right? So what we have here in the Tablet of Maqsúd, we have Baha'u'lláh addressing the themes like the purpose of religion. We have Baha'u'lláh suggesting solutions for the establishment of peace amongst nations, discussing the value of human beings, and presenting several ethical teachings. There are other texts where he also exposes other principles aiming at transforming society, transforming human beings, transforming this planet into a global village. These teachings are not panacea per se. These are guidelines, okay? Guidelines to help us to transform the world of nations into a global village, well balanced and in a state of constant progress. And you can forget everything about what I've been talking here today, but I'd like you to remember those words of Baha'u'lláh, that where his teachings, all his teachings can be summarized. That is, you are the fruits of one tree and the leaves of one branch. So what I did here today was I present a brief analysis of one of the many tablets of Baha'u'lláh, that is a tablet of Maqsúd. I've identified what I consider to be the main themes of this epistle. It could be a more extensive and profound analysis. It could even make a course here. And I'm sure that many of the friends present here could present this epistle in another way, could for instance, identify other themes and could find other reasons to like this tablet. So I hope this presentation has aroused some curiosity and interest for this tablet of Baha'u'lláh. So thank you very much for your patience, for your for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me just stop your screen. All right, thank you so much. That was really interesting. And yeah, like you said, it's a great introduction to the writings of Baha'u'lláh and just to the Baha'i faith generally. Thank you. So if anyone has questions, you can go ahead and put it in the chat now and we'll have time to address them. So the first question is, in light of this revelation of Baha'u'lláh, how do you think the current war against Ukraine could be resolved?
I don't know. Of course, I don't know. I don't have that wisdom to know. What I know is that when we have a crisis this big, we have a rebalance of the world equilibrium. We have a redefinition of the world order. My father, he's 87 years old now. He has a fragility, physical fragility of a person in 87, that is 87 years old, but he's wiser and wiser. And he once told me about this war. See, the world order that was born at the Yalta conference will be that. They are trying to change the rules. So we don't know how this war will develop and how it will end. What seems obvious to me is that we're going to have a change in the world order. That's the only thing I can say.
Thank you. I guess I have a question. You talked about humanism. I guess what do you think Baha'u'llah's writings offer that just a humanist approach alone wouldn't offer?
Humanists today are much linked to atheists' trends of thought. They have very nice principles, but they see human being as, let's say, stardust. Well, to quote Carl Sagan, we are all made of stardust. Is as if we were parts of stardust that got self-conscious. They ignore our spiritual nature. Okay, and you cannot have a fully developed human being if we ignore that spiritual side. Okay, of course, we have humanists that defend education for all children. Fantastic. That saying that rationality is the greatest strength of human being. Absolutely agree. Okay, but they have to understand that what they don't seem to focus is the strength of our spirituality. How have we developed as a species? If you read the book *Sapiens* by Yuval Harari, the Israeli sociologist, he says that we, as a species, we develop because we cooperate. We cooperate more and better. When the Homo sapiens appeared, there were 6 human races, 6 types of humanoids. There was a Neanderthal, there were several others. To compare the sapiens with Neanderthal, the Neanderthal has a tremendous advantage, has a bigger brain, is stronger. But the Neanderthal did not cooperate, not as well as we did, as the sapiens did. So we end up, the sapiens, we end up to, let's say, create the conditions for other human species to disappear. Okay, this capacity, this trend to cooperation is reinforced by, so it's a key for our development, and that is reinforced in the teachings of every religion, every world religion. Okay, we don't see cooperation as a mere ideological principle. Okay? Cooperation is at the genesis of the human race, of the Homo sapiens. That's how we grew here. Okay?
Thank you. Is there something about this particular tablet that inspired your special study?
Okay, I'm going to confess you all, I am what could be described as a library mice. And I like to go after books and look for this. This is interesting. Is there any reference here and there? And I found the tablet of Maqsúd in his book tablets of Bahá'u'lláh, and I don't know why it just called my attention, and then I started looking at other books that would refer to these tablets, and I was curious. I'm still very curious about who was Maqsúd, what happened to him. I wonder what happened to him what was his reaction when he received this tablet. I wish I could see his face reading this tablet. That must have been fantastic, because there are other believers that were addressed by Baha'u'lláh that we know very well, but this one was almost ignored. So I was curious about that. Who was this Maqsúd? Maybe in the next world I will meet him and he will tell me how was it like to receive a tablet by Baha'u'lláh. I have that expectation.
Looks like we don't have any other questions. So thank you again to Mr. Oliveira. This was really interesting, and we really appreciate all your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you. So our speaker next week will be Dr. Brian Ull, and his topic will be what makes Baha'i consultation unique. So again, this will be at 12 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. And if you're not on our mailing list, I'll put the contact form in the chat. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next Saturday. Bye.
Bye-bye.